for talking to me, Guy. Let's start from the persistent narrative that we cannot go back to the way things were before the crisis.
I don't think we can. I don't
Yeah,
think.
I agree. So, and is there something closer to getting to a basic income policy, especially in Europe? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a crisis, as I've described it in my books, a crisis of the end of rentier capitalism.
Okay.
And rentier capitalism is so fragile. The inequalities and insecurities are so great now that they won't be able to continue and restore that. That's right. I don't know, you've got that.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be able to restore rentier capitalism.
Okay.
If they try, I think there will be a second wave of the pandemic. The economic slump will continue. The precariat will grow. The precariat will get even worse conditions, and it's going to lead to social violence. But we don't know whether that social violence would lead to a progressive agenda or authoritarian populist agenda.
Yeah.
And in Italy, I would be very worried that people like Salvini will take advantage of the breakdown to assert a right-wing populist agenda. Just like in Britain or the United States, the right-wing agenda is still a possible outcome of what we're seeing. So I think it's very important that the precariat organizes and develops a progressive agenda, which they then start articulating and spreading, because otherwise it'll be yet another occasion when progressive forces don't get heard, they don't get a narrative. And I think the crisis is really a political economy crisis about having a progressive agenda. For me, basic income is part of that agenda. It's not a panacea by itself, but it's an important part, because we all need security. We all need basic security. And that's the message I would wish to give in response to this crisis, because you can't restore rentier capitalism, but what they may do is impose a much more authoritarian system. That's the danger.
So it's a matter of spreading a bit more the ideas about, among other things, basic income in your view. But you don't see we are going closer to right now to an agenda which includes basic income, because in Italy, for example, we haven't anything like that. We have a sort of, now in the legislation, a sort of emergency income, which is just for the very poor household, and you know.
I know, and I think all political movements have got to escape that, and they've got to say why we need a basic income, why we need to give people basic security. And I think Italians are capable of seeing now that unless you have such basic security, we're going to have another wave of a pandemic. May not be the same, may be the same, but it will continue and it will rumble again, because millions of Italians are going to be economically fragile. They will have no resilience. And I think that that's the political message that movements such as one you're talking about, that's the one they should be emphasizing, that everybody needs support in this crisis, everybody. And if you have just a small number getting support, a large number just above them in the income situation, in the precariat, are going to be vulnerable. And that will continue. So I think all I would say to you is make that message again and again and again, because that's where we've got to build the strength in the young precariat to demand these changes. And it won't happen unless we demand the changes. But I'm encouraged that more and more people are now across Europe are supporting basic income. I mean, there's just been an opinion poll where over 70% of Europeans are now in favor of a basic income. So it is feasible that we could put the pressure on the politicians to move in that direction and shame them.
Okay, but how do you see the European Union position, role about this issue?
I think it will move at national level, at subnational level, and the European Union itself may shift. I happen to know that Christine Lagarde, the head of the European Central Bank now, she's in favor of a basic income. She's told me that. And I think she can't take a lead, but I would suggest that once some of the leaders of EU countries are converted or are made sympathetic, then the institutions at the European community level would shift.
Okay, that would be a very huge move towards.
Huge move. Yeah. But I mean, I think everything will depend on pressure from the ordinary people and the precariat in particular.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about the fundamentals of UBI. For example, as regards the objections that people raise on its desirability. In the book you say we need to fight against 8 giants. What is it that you mean by that?
Well, the image comes from a report in 1942 by William Beveridge, the Beveridge Report, which has established the principles of the welfare state. And he said the challenge at that time was to kill 5 giants, okay? And those 5 giants were disease, ignorance, idleness, squalor, and want. In other words, basic needs, really basic, okay? And my imagery is that there are 8 modern giants that are threatening any progressive move to a good society, be it in Italy, Britain, or anywhere else. And the 8 modern giants are the ones that are on that cover of the book you've just shown. Inequality, insecurity, debt, stress, precarity, and that's it. Automation, populism, and extinction, with the main one emphasis on the threat of extinction, because I believe that the extinction movement and the precariat realize that we need an ecological approach. And in all of these cases of the 8 giants, a basic income would help weaken their threat. And I think that is the key message. In other words, we need a basic income to lessen the threat of all 8 giants that are listed there. They're not going to get rid of them altogether, but they'll reduce the strength of their threat. That's the message of the book.
Great. So you see, it's very interesting. You see a connection between movements like Extinction Rebellion, if I am right, and precariat.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think it's important to keep the two together. I mean, I think the precariat is a class that is increasingly understanding its conditions, and it knows that ecological pollution, global warming, and the threat of extinction is linked to pandemics, linked to these other things, and it's all coming together. It's a matter of mobilizing people in large numbers to demand the changes required to beat those 8 giants and prevent pandemics being as serious as they are. So I think it's a political challenge, but the movements between the Extinction Rebellion, Precariat movements, and so on are where the future of politics should lie. So in your area, I would link them together.
That's right. Our main inspiration as a movement is to link together social justice and ecological justice. The last question, as I know you must go. One of the things that people may find peculiar is that a basic income is awarded to everyone, and so to the well-off as well, irrespective of any condition. What's the justification for this?
For me, this is a matter of common justice for everybody, and you should tackle the inequality issue through the taxation system. And if everybody is given a basic income, and then you could increase the tax rate for the rich.
Okay.
But the important thing is to make it a right, a citizenship right or a legal resident right for everybody. And it's a share in the Commonwealth. But if you do it with a means test, then you exclude a lot of people because the system doesn't work, it doesn't reach people, all the application problems, poverty trap problems, and so on. So it's much more efficient and equitable to give it to everybody and then tax back from the wealthy.